is going on, everybody? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where in the world you're joining us from. Super excited to be here with you today. I'm Frank Corva, host of the Fedi Community Chat. And with us today, we have two, maybe three special guests, the first of which is we have Yankho Ngoleka, who's coming to us from Malawi today. Yankho is the founder of BitDevs Malawi. He's also the co-founder of the Women of Satoshi Cooperative, an organization that we've written about at Fedi. Right now, I think we're actually having some slight technical difficulties with Yankho, so we're hoping that he comes on soon. But I'm personally excited about this conversation because this year's Africa Bitcoin conference is actually based in Malawi. So we'll get a little bit of insight as to where Bitcoiners from around the world will be gathering. Also, I think we'll get a little bit of history on Malawi and what is happening, what has happened there. There's been some pretty wild bouts of inflation. It's definitely a country where Bitcoin, I think, is incredibly needed, not just for the permissionless transfers, but also for people to maintain their wealth. And we will be bringing our guests in just a second. As I said, we had a slight difficulties as we were getting started. From what I hear, we have Mr. Modibe Matsepane, Africa Community Master for with us. So Modibe, there he is. He's with me. Modibe, how are things this morning, this afternoon, this evening by you?
Hey, Frank. Things are good on my side. Always a pleasure getting here, talking with some of our community leaders and builders, and with today's guest from Malawi.
That's right.
It's going to be exciting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am looking forward to sharing the work that we do with communities in Malawi and how those link with what everyone else is doing on the continent and some lessons that we'll be sharing from there.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Modibe. So Malawi, actually, as we're waiting for Yankho to join again, we might be joined as well by Thandi, who's the other co-founder of Women of Satoshi Cooperative. For a little bit of background, there's some internet issues in Malawi today. So we're having it's been a little bit of a struggle getting everything sorted, but we're going to do the best we can. Our guests might come in and out as the episode goes on. But for the time being, let's start with a quick catch up. Maybe actually start, Modibe, with an overview here. So you're the community master for the continent at large, Africa at large. I think you were one of the first people who brought the Women of Satoshi Cooperative, the cooperative that Thandi and Yankho co-founded, to my attention. We wrote a story on it earlier this year for Fedi. Kind of blew my mind. Was very, very inspiring, doing work out in the rural regions of Malawi, particularly with women, some of whom maybe didn't have all the formal education that some people in the cities may have had. So really reaching people who I think would benefit to a great degree. Could you give us a little bit more background, a little bit more color on this, if you don't mind?
Absolutely. So it all started at ABC in Mauritius. So we have this nice Fedi lounge, which we call the Community Corner, where everyone who had a community initiative could come on board, share their story with everyone who was at the Fedi lounge. And we were supposed to be joined by Grant, but he could not join. But Yankho was in Mauritius as well. I think for BitTrust Builders Matters, he's one of the top achievers at BitTrust. So he was, coming to get an accolade. But because they are all in Malawi, Grant asked Yankho to represent them and also share more about what they are doing at Women of Satoshi Cooperative. To me, it was a bit surprising because when he introduced Women of Satoshi Cooperative, I thought it would be, a lady who is leading the initiative, but it was a guy, and explained the work that they are doing in Malawi around digital literacy, educating women on skills which they can use to empower themselves along with their communities. That's really where things started. But when you zoom in on Women of Satoshi Cooperative, the work that they do, some of it's not even reported on their Twitter pages, but they do amazing work on the ground. And the integration of Bitcoin in their activities is one that puts a lot of flavor on what they are doing. So from ABC in Mauritius, they then set up this beautiful community on Fedi, and they were one of the top three best communities which were set up at the conference. Um, so with that knowledge that Yankho had acquired at ABC in Mauritius, he then went back home, shared with Tandy and others, showed them how the Fedi app works. And as you may be aware, Tandy, for example, has been a very, very active promoter, follower, and advocate for Fedi, because she's really locked in on how the app works and use it for their community, which has been amazing, a good source of feedback and validation for the product on how it works and the impact it has for people on the ground.
Yeah. I appreciate the fact that you brought up the fact that often a lot of the work that's going on doesn't necessarily get transmitted across social media. I think this is a really big thing that often happens in the Bitcoin space, but also just amongst people who are out there doing the real work, who maybe don't have the time to document all of it, or maybe can't document all of it because there's privacy reasons around some of the people that people are working with. On that quick note, I know this is sort of a little bit broader than Malawi. Do you feel like there's a lot of that out there? We do see plenty of people making noise on the internet. I think, not trying to cast any shade or anything, but some of those people aren't always doing the super important work or all the work it seems they're doing, while at the same time you have people like Tandy, who, as I said, are traveling to rural regions of Malawi and really trying to make an impact on people who I think personally Fedi and Bitcoin would deeply benefit. Based on the work that you do, how much of the work that people are doing, this important work, goes unseen?
What we have seen is it's in most cases like the two extremes. There's one who promotes a lot of a few things that they do, but the way it's promoted, it seems like they are doing a lot. And then there's that one who is focused on building, just head down, building, doing things. And when they get a chance to stop building, it's only then that they share with the world what they're actually doing. So what I've seen help a lot of builders and community leaders is learning how others do it. But it's always important for people to report honestly, report diligently. So most of the builders actually build, but they don't share much of what they're doing, mainly because they are not doing it for fame or for visibility. It's simply something that you do for your neighbor or community. Usually, you are really looking at just empowering those people around you, and everyone else who knows. Okay, it's good that they know, but they are not the target audience for the work that most of the people are doing. And I think spaces like this where people get to share what they are doing in their communities often helps people put into perspective how things are going on the ground.
That's good to hear. I apologize. There were just some messages coming through in our chat here. I think Modibe was looking at as well. It looks like we have Yankho back, so I want to try to bring him up. So if our producer Merit, there he is, Yankho Ngoleka, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, how are you, sir? How's everything? Thank you for your diligence in trying to get everything set up there, internet, despite the difficulties. We sincerely appreciate it. Yankho, how's everything this afternoon?
Well, thank you so much. I am finally back online. Network is really bad this side, but yeah, hopefully it'll keep us going because I'm out of the city currently. So yeah, you know how it is. But it's actually a lovely sunny afternoon here in Blantyre.
Amazing. We were just saying Blantyre will be that'll be where the next Africa Bitcoin conference is happening. Maybe actually, let's just jump in there for a second. What can people expect? Bitcoiners from around the world will be coming to Africa in December, to Malawi, to Blantyre. What can they expect when they get to Blantyre?
Well, they should expect something big. We are actually cooking, like most of the devs like to say. So yeah, and it's going to be really big. And I'm super excited. At first, I was a little bit nervous seeing just where we're coming from, Mauritius, where it's just like, wow, fancy cities and all that. But, we're going to give people the real authentic African experience and they're going to love it. So yeah, It's going to be awesome.
I love that. Appreciate that. Let's rewind back to your story. So Yankho does amazing work running BitDevs Malawi. He co-founded the Women of Satoshi Cooperative. He's an open source developer, contributor, wears many hats, which is, I love talking to people like you, Renaissance people, if you will. Please give us a little bit, take us back. What's your story? Are you classically trained as a developer? What got you into the community side of all this? And maybe if you want to go as far back as when you even found Bitcoin and got inspired to become kind of a member of the community.
Awesome. Let's go a little bit back in time. Should be somewhere around 2016 when I had initially discovered Bitcoin. So, but before even that, let's just go even a little further from the time when I was just curious, a medical practitioner who was really curious about technical stuff. So I didn't come from a native software engineering background. So I graduated from med school and I was working as a medical practitioner until there was a time when we had an issue with a dialysis machine in one of the labs. And we had to wait for like weeks for our biomedical engineer then, before we started trading our own, to sort of like fix the dialysis machine. So I was like, what's this thing? I mean, why do we have to wait when the blood samples are not being processed? They say something to do with the dialysis. I mean, the FBC machine, sorry. So when the biomedical engineer finally came through, I was in talks with him and I started having an interest in, being a nerd because I thought going through med school was not a nerd enough until I wanted to discover, the other side of being a nerd in computers and stuff. So it was just a curiosity, but it didn't result to anything until I was just curious online and, the word Bitcoin kept popping up on my, browser tabs, whether it's just some scam and, people doing this and that. So the first experience for me with Bitcoin was not really a very nice experience because I got scammed. And after that, I started hating Bitcoin and anything related. I was like, no, this is a scam. And if someone would come to me, talk about Bitcoin, I would hate them for that. So you make me lose my money, you people. So yeah, until 2017, this Bitcoin word kept buzzing. And I was like, you know what, maybe there is something more to it. And this is when my my technical enthusiasm even grow bigger. And that's when I joined the first cohort of the ALX software engineering program, which was a 1-year program. It was for free then. So it was a software engineering boot camp. So after graduating from the ALX, I started playing around with code, but not Bitcoin code per se. Okay. And then in 2017, the same year, I met a guy who introduced me to Forex trading. And he said the only way to fund my account from the country from where I come from is through Bitcoin. And there we go again, Bitcoin. I was like, what? Bitcoin? And I didn't know any local Bitcoiners by then. And there was like literally no one until the guy pointed me to a first Bitcoiner in Malawi that I can confidently say he is the first Bitcoiner. His name, I think his handle is Gray BTC. Of course, right now he's into, other stuff, but yeah, he's the first Bitcoiner. He's the only first guy I ever bought Bitcoin from in 2017. With 100,000 local currency, which was around $80-something. So that was my first experience with Bitcoin. And when the money arrived in my wallet, I didn't believe it. I was like, what? Money? So that was my first experience with Bitcoin. And then I just like most of the people, I started chasing the bags, shit coins, I got lost in transition until my focus, I refocused in 2024, starting January. That's when I said, you know what, I'm done with all the crypto FUD and stuff. I'm going to be concentrating on Bitcoin. And because I wanted to do something with my tech career, because I was still working as a medical personnel, but now after graduating, and I'd already started the software engineering program at University of the People, which I'm yet to graduate this year. So yeah, I said, what better way to put my skills to use than to study this piece of technology and understand it to its core. So basically, that's a very brief intro, if I could call it brief, brief intro. I got into Bitcoin. So yeah, it's history from there. Meeting Bitcoin Bomber, then getting introduced to the whole Bitcoin ecosystem. Then it has always been history from there.
Amazing stuff. I appreciate your candidness. You're going down, I won't repeat the word, but starts with an S and it ends in coin, going down that route. Sometimes it's hard to admit that. So it's, I appreciate that. But also it's funny, you're the second person I've met who has moved away from a medical career to pursue work in this space. Another one is someone who actually he goes to BitDevs frequently here in New York. And I always find that to be such a powerful statement. I mean, you're literally helping to save people's lives, keep people healthy. And you've come to something within yourself that says this thing over here might be more important for me to do. Maybe that's too hyperbolic, but there's something there. That speaks volumes about what it is that Bitcoin really is and what it can do for people. So thank you for sharing all that. I was not aware of that, and that's super interesting. I want to go to, so what did you do first when it came to community-based things? Did you start Malawi? Did you co-found the Women of Satoshi Cooperative? What was your first engagement on that level?
All right. So I think from 2024, I think the first ever well-structured Bitcoin education program that I joined was the ME Premier Bitcoin Diploma. And after I'd finished, and the knowledge that I got from that structured education program was, it amazed me and how it changed the way I view the world and everything else. And that's when I attached myself to Bitcoin Bomber, because that was the only Bitcoin community here in Malawi by then. So I joined, and because I was really good at learning, and I was really eager, the Bitcoin Bomber guys, were quick to recognize me, and they were taking me on tour to sort of like help them with their programs. So I went to their maybe 5 or 4 meetups where I was also facilitating, especially the Trezor Academy. I'm rocking the Trezor t-shirt.
So yeah, we got it. Yeah, nice.
So I was there with the Trezor Academy education programs, and then I noticed a pattern where in all of our meetups, in all of our education programs that we went to, it was only male dominated. And I wasn't sure why women weren't showing up. And the worst one was when we went to a certain university, we had an audience of about 100 people, which was, the first time being, wow, it's a lot of people. But then there was only, because there was a registry, and there was only like 2 or 3 ladies present, and one of them which had been personally invited by us because we know the lady. So it was striking to me, saying, why aren't there women in these spaces when women are the builders of these communities? If you talk about our local context, women are the guardians of these communities. They are raising our kids, and they shouldn't be left out in this financial inclusion system, especially where there are no sort of like gatekeepers. So that's when I said, I think I need to understand the women's story, and I think what better way to do that than to form a women's only organization, and take it from the basics, and then after I understand better their story, and after they are well versed in this, hand it over to them, and then they can continue on from there. Then we can have a community led by women. So my first ever community engagement was through Bitcoin, Women of Satoshi Cooperative. So that was my first initiative.
Absolutely amazing. Also, just to say this, I didn't get a chance to say it up front. Modibe, if you want to jump in at any points, obviously, please do so. But I have a follow-up there, and it is, I'm close with Lorraine Marcel from Bitcoin Dada, and I love the work that she's done in bringing, I actually put this a certain way, I say, in bringing African women to Bitcoin, not just bringing Bitcoin to African women, but finding space for these women to start working as developers or as playing other roles within the Bitcoin space and the Bitcoin industry. It's really important. My guess is that it's slightly difficult for a man to start that role. I get the sense that women intuitively tend to trust other women a little bit more. That's not a blanket statement. Please don't, internet, please don't try to cancel that tends to be true for certain reasons. Some of them around safety or just, whatever it is. I'm not here to I'm not going to be an anthropologist or a sociologist. I'm not going to kind of break that apart today. But what was it like to initially get something like the Women of Satoshi Cooperative off the ground? And as you said, you had plans to step back from it. And it seems that you've kind of handed it over to Tandy at this point. But those initial stages had to have been fairly challenging. A man starting this cooperative for women, I would imagine that there was maybe a little bit of friction that you had to work through at some points.
Yeah, it was.
I think he froze just for a second there.
One that
Yankho, just hold on 1 second. I think you froze for a second. I want to make sure we get everything that. We lost him. That was a question I was really looking forward to. Modibe, while I have you here, when it comes to women as community leaders across Africa, I think that this is a theme that continues to come up in conversations, not only that we've had here at Fedi, but conversations I had while I was covering Africa, Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia, personally, through other avenues. Women as community leaders, it seems super important. What is it that often helps women to take that step forward to do work when it comes to Bitcoin? Because again, Bitcoin, oftentimes people have been scammed. There's a lot of there are some issues around Bitcoin. So oftentimes, what is it that sort of gives women the confidence to say, I'm going to step out and start introducing this technology to other people in my community, other women, other community members, etc.?
The most critical part is impact. As Yankho was about to get into it, women are left out in most of the things which have been done on the continent. And, it might not be on purpose, but there is some established norms and customs which often make it easy for us as guys to get together, do things. And then, with women, it's only an afterthought. Someone will pick it up that there's a few women and then they will try to get them involved. But even with that, it's not as easy as just saying, I'm going to bring you along to the program. They have to feel like it's something that they're doing for themselves, not just for inclusion purposes. And I think I would say impact that is going to have on the community and those around them has to be at the forefront, because if there is that, it means people can potentially earn from it, and earning is the big part of day-to-day activities in Africa. If a person leaves what they usually do to put bread on the table, whatever they'll be doing has to have future potential of doing the same thing or even more. So in programs like the one that Yankho started, I believe with the skills which have been taught to women, they will help most of them better their lives, and then that will benefit their families as well as the community.
Appreciate that, Modibe. Yankho, we were just having Modibe talk about what it's like for women to start taking on this role of introducing Bitcoin to either other women or community members. Because as you mentioned, we often hear stories about scams around Bitcoin or other crypto stuff. And sometimes you sort of have to get people through that process of unlearning first, that's not what Bitcoin is, that there's actually a lot that you do have to learn about it to truly understand it and use it correctly. But I don't want to take away from you. Thank you for your patience and for rejoining us. I want to go back to you. You were in the middle of just about to say what it was like to get this Women of Satoshi Cooperative off the ground.
All right. So I think in the very first version of the Women of Satoshi, my initial idea was women empowerment, empowering women with the skills, with the knowledge, and also giving them equal opportunities within the Bitcoin space to sort of like participate in the technology that matters the most to them. So, of course, one of the programs that was actually at the core was to sort of like reintegrate girls back into schools, and also to look at starting microeconomic activities in groups, right? So in our local language, we have women coming together and then they do savings, like local savings, and because they are frustrated by the banks, but because they don't know about Bitcoin, but they think like if they come together, they can do, their own micro loaning services, they can save their money. So this is very common here in Malawi. So that was my first initial idea, to penetrate through these already existing structures, and that so I kind of like penetrated that system, and then try to bring people on board and give them the hope that, okay, there is a better tool, a better way to save this money. But I think right from the top, there was always the question, yes, you are bringing in this tool, which is actually good, but where do we even get it in the first place? So these women are actually looking for things that they can do to sort of like, first of all, empower themselves so that they can actually earn something, and they can eventually save it in some sort of like a tool that is very resistant to inflation and all this kind of stuff in between. So that was like the balance, the challenge that I got right from the top, because in the first group there was like a lot of people who joined, but when they saw that they weren't going to be earning like money, they were like, okay, I think this is not something that we can do. I thought this is, because here the narrative is Bitcoin is money, and when money in terms of riches, I should say. So when I joined the Bitcoin space in the first place, even my family, I was like, oh yeah, you're getting rich, nah? I see you're getting the monies there. So that's the thing, because they're thinking about trading and all this kind of stuff in between. So when they initially got in and they saw that we are only doing Bitcoin education, and all this kind of stuff in between, they were like, a lot of them dropped out, but the ones that were resilient and then stood against all the odds up until this time are the ones who are the OGs. And I knew that this is actually something, and they were like the role models to sort of like get this model working in an urban setting and then implement it in one of our first circular economies in one of the rural areas in Malawi. So yeah.
Amazing. Really amazing stuff. There was something you mentioned just about, let's just zoom in on the concept of money in Malawi. I remember being in Ghana in December, I think it was November or December 2023 for the Africa Bitcoin conference. And I believe it was on the way home, I heard the news of, I think it was an overnight 40% currency devaluation in Malawi. And I think the currency there is the kwacha, if I'm not mistaken. So you have an overnight 40% currency devaluation. And I bring this up because I think some people would say, so if I talk with someone here, one of my aunts or something, and say, well, Bitcoin could be quite useful to preserve your wealth in a place like Malawi. And oftentimes they're like, well, why would you use something so volatile to preserve your wealth? It's like, well, when the currency can lose 40% of its value overnight, Bitcoin's volatility doesn't really seem like anything. Well, it's something, but it's obviously not as pronounced when you have it against something like, I don't know, the US dollar or the euro or something along those lines. So can you speak to this thing a little, to this idea a little bit? Because in my mind, and Tandi told me as well, there's been further devaluations even in the most recent months. The currency has lost a decent amount. So in my mind, I'm thinking, why would people want to trade it? If the kwacha is getting impacted so heavily by inflation, why would people ever want to get rid of their Bitcoin there?
First of all, I think just to answer the question, like from that very point, is because people don't understand trading in the first place, what trading really is. Yeah. So that's the first thing. But when we come to talk about the devaluation, and it was actually 44%, not 40%. So it was actually 44%. Yeah, devaluation. And we've had other smaller ones, the smaller version of the 44. And yeah, it's really bad. And this is the point at which we are trying to get people to understand Bitcoin. And this is the exact angle that we are trying to help people understand Bitcoin. Because then if they can relate it, and this is what I always bring up in most of our meetups that we always go to, and there's always, on top of that, there's always that official Reserve Bank of Malawi inflation rate, which is, I think the official one is about 2%. So just by leaving 100,000 Malawi kwacha in your bank account, if there's like all the conditions are okay, your money is going to lose 2% of it at the end of the year. So which is already bad. So that's always the angle right now that we are trying to help people understand, because the kwacha is bad, like bad. I mean, take it from Edith Mpumwire from Uganda, who came to Malawi on her own business trip. She was frustrated, and she thought things worked like the rest of the world, and she has worked in the bank before, and she has worked with Western Union. She knows the systems, but she was frustrated to know that Malawi doesn't conform to any of that. It's like we are completely living in our own kind of world. And just to let you know, Malawi has got the second highest petrol or fuel or gas price in the world, in a country where the money is not stable, and you're getting all these kind of things in between. And this affects a lot of things. So yeah, I mean, this is the angle that we want to try and help people understand that, hey, this is the kwacha. Why would you want to get rid of your kwacha for something as valuable as Bitcoin? So that's exactly the angle that we're trying to help people understand.
And appreciate all of that. Yeah, I would imagine also Malawi is landlocked as well. Oftentimes that makes the price of things higher because they have to be imported from a different coast. You're not too far from the coast, but that does make things a bit more difficult. I want to go back to BitDevs as well here. So I'm very, very curious. I think BitDevs is such a fun, it's a great culture in and of itself. I love developers getting together. I'm not highly technical myself. So when I go to BitDevs in New York, I do a little gratitude prayer. I say thank you God for these people existing and doing all this amazing work on Bitcoin. How many people are coming out to BitDevs Malawi? What sorts of contributions are they making? Is it the same sort of format that we have maybe here in New York where BitDevs started, which is Socratic seminar format? What is it like there with BitDevs?
All right. I think you saw me just turning my head around. I'm trying to get the source of power here. Now we're no longer talking about the internet issue. Now we're talking about the power issue.
Oh my Lord,
man! So let me just try to connect it. If I can do that real quick, yeah, sure.
Thanks. Take your time, Modibe. I'm going to go over to you if you don't mind. With what Yankho just shared about inflation in Malawi, it seems like a very pronounced or unique case when it comes to how badly a currency has been debased. Am I wrong in that? So Africa has 54 different countries. I don't think we operate in all of them. I don't think you're working with people in all of them. But based on the stories you hear, does it seem that Malawi is relatively unique in just how bad their fiat currency has been debased? I think you might be on mute, Modibe. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yes. So the currency debasement is a common thing across the continent. It's not just unique to Malawi. So there's just the degree of this country is way worse than the other ones. Like he's saying, with our friend in Uganda being in Malawi more frustrated, but there is that in Uganda as well. There is many other countries which are experiencing the same issues on the continent. So it's one thing which I'd say is common across many African countries.
In terms of maybe, I appreciate that perspective, but is it, I get the sense that it's just more pronounced. I mean, do most countries experience an overnight 40% drop and the 44% drop in the value of a currency? It seems like that sort of situation is relatively unique, but please let me know if I'm wrong.
I don't have the specific figures to reference, but it's it's the degree at, like in Malawi been over 40%. In other countries, there's a similar thing, just that the degree differs. For example, I keep hearing stories about prices changing while people are in stores. In Nigeria, I've heard that in Nigeria, sometimes in Ghana, but it looks like in Ghana things are slightly better now. But people get paid and have to immediately spend money on things, or if they try to spend the money the following day, it will be way lesser. But in some cases, when you're busy paying, people are busy changing prices, just to show how much the currency that people have in their hands loses value in a day or overnight.
Wow. Okay. Appreciate the perspective. Thank you, Modibe. Yankho, let's go back to you. We were just about to, I believe, get into BitDevs culture in Malawi, how many people are showing up, what's getting discussed there, what the meetings look like.
All right. So the idea of BitDevs came in because I saw that I was more like from the beginning, I was more inclined to the technical side of Bitcoin. And, so what better way to sort of like empower my fellow developers here in Malawi than to bring them this Bitcoin development to them. So, and I knew that I was going to give power back to the Women of Satoshi in January this year. So I knew that I was going to have a lot of time off my sleeve to sort of like handle other things. So coming back from Mauritius after the not only the Bitcoin conference, but the BitTrust annual gathering, I sort of like asked the BitTrust team to what are the requirements to start a BitDevs, because one thing that has stood out in my country as well because of these economic issues is that we are having a lot of graduates graduating from school, but there aren't enough jobs for them to sort of like go around. And one of the painful thing is to see a software engineer, just drinking local beer in town because they have nothing to do, and
Right.
They can work on a certain infrastructure, they can work on a piece of technology to sort of like help the country, but they're just waiting on the hope that they're going to get employed someday. So I think the idea of BitDevs for me was to sort of like help the youth, to connect them to opportunities that are out there, in the Bitcoin ecosystem, but in the way also helping to strengthen the Bitcoin ecosystem with, because these are bright people who are, really doing amazing things, but they just don't have the right direction to sort of like the opportunities to sort of like get connected. And this is what I always say when I was selected to go to Mauritius as one of the top performers in my country, and I was the only one who was there. I always tell the people that it's not that I'm the smartest, but it's because a lot of people don't know about these opportunities, and I knew about these opportunities earlier, and that's the reason why I was there. So for me, I've always been that kind of person who always want to help other people, connect them to opportunities, and in the way to also help us come together and tell us solutions that can actually make our country a better place through Bitcoin. So if we have a lot of people contributing to Bitcoin, we can bump heads, come up with payment infrastructures that can connect us, in Africa, and then, leaving us off the radar, connecting us to the big global economy. So one man cannot do it alone. So I said, you know what, I'm going to start BitDevs. I'm going to be going into universities specifically to sort of like collaborate with universities, different computer science departments, to sort of like introduce people to Bitcoin. And from there, we can actually build something or do something. So I can say that we aren't at the point where we can organize our BitDevs in a Socratic kind of format, because it's one thing to have a developer in the Web2 space or thereabouts and to know what Bitcoin is. So we have to get them off the ground to understand what Bitcoin is and what Bitcoin open source means, and then getting them connected and then working out from there. And I think after 6 months, because we just started in March. So after 6 months, we are planning to sort of like now go into the normal BitDevs that everyone has, because we cannot start talking about PR review clubs when people don't even know what a PR is, and
Right.
all this kind of stuff. And so, yeah, so that's the story for BitDevs right now. So what we usually do is we have, different from other BitDevs, we have a dedicated WhatsApp group where we have classes every Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. 3 hours, right? So we have 3 hours on Mondays, 3 hours on Wednesdays, and roughly 4 hours on Saturdays, where we do so we go through the Mastering Bitcoin book, learning Bitcoin from the command, sort of like the pathways for BitTrust. So we go through that so that when people are actually going into the actual cohorts or the pathways, they actually know what they're getting into, and it's easy for them to take it from there and to understand the whole thing. So yeah.
Amazing, Yankho. Truly inspiring work. I feel it in my whole body. It's just people like you are doing, you're really opening doors within your country for people, showing them certain possibilities. And one of the big themes that I just continue to hear from people around the world, not just in different African countries, but this idea of not just Bitcoin as a savings technology or a borderless payment system, but an opportunity that the industry and the jobs out there, and also this idea of not sitting around and waiting for that, but building something in the open source space, looking for a problem, thinking about how you can solve that problem, whether it's payment infrastructure in Africa or something else for another Bitcoin company, whatever that is. I think exposing people to those opportunities you're doing them a tremendous service. So just want to highlight that and say thank you on behalf of the Bitcoin community for doing such work. We do have some questions from the community, which I'm going to get to in just a second. If you have any questions and you're listening, please feel free to drop those questions in the comments of the Twitter live stream. Last question, I want to get to Fedi a little bit here, and this can be for Modibe and for Yankho. I'm curious, in different countries, people gravitate to Fedi for different reasons. For example, some people really love the idea of private payments, or some people really like the community function of Fedi and being able to have their own sort of homegrown mini apps in the community section of the app. In Malawi, what would you say are the one or two things that people gravitate to most when it comes to Fedi?
All right, thank you. So in Malawi, I think. Oh, is it for you, Modibe? Yeah?
No, for you first,
no,
Yankho.
I was gonna say this is for Yankho. This is for Yankho.
Right.
This
yeah, okay.
Yeah. So one thing that I've seen with Fedi here in Malawi is, remember in our conversation I mentioned about these small groups, micro savings loan kind of systems, and this was actually. And I'm even jealous because this was like my idea. I wanted to build something like that, and that Fedi came in. So this is like, when I, even myself personally, when I heard about Fedi, I was so proud about. I was like, wow, this is exactly what my community needs. Because, thinking about it, like I say, Bitcoin is better experienced than learned in a classroom. So this is giving people that, that practical experience of having communities build around this kind of technology. And especially because when we were in Chinji, when we had one of the Fedi meetings in Chinji, which is where our local circular economy is running, Tandy had brought something really innovative where, she was asking the women, what are the challenges that you are facing with the current, we call them banking konde. So it's like a bank nearby, something like that. So what are you facing with the current banking konde? And one of the issues is, the issue that Fedi is already solving, the Matsepane feature. So you have a treasurer who is responsible for all this money, then they can actually just spend it anyhow, and they have problems with people running away with the money. But with Fedi, there are people are creating these communities around it. And of course, they're in the process of still trying to understand everything else in between. But, it's a hope for people to create communities around it, create sort of like a Matsepane banking konde within it, and sort of like help with this, because the savings now, because even when we were talking about Women of Satoshi initially, having these businesses running and people saving, but where do you save the money? Safely, we don't want to bring this complex 2 of 2, 3 of 2 Matisik kind of thing. It's already complex in its own, but Fedi sort of like takes that abstraction and then brings it in there. So that's one thing that people love the most, the community feature. So yeah, I think most people gravitate towards that feature, and that's really amazing. And the mini apps, of course, for people that are especially in the urban areas, it's like one super app where everything else is in there, and you just have to navigate through. And those are two of the things that people are really levitating to when it comes to Fedi in
awesome.
Malawi.
Appreciate that, Yankho. Did you want to add anything, Modibe? Or I know you handed that one over to Yankho, but any other thoughts?
So I think that comes up across every community that we go to, in Africa, is the usefulness of the multi-spend feature, and everyone tells you a different name. In South Africa, it's Stokvel. In Mozambique, is Shitiki.
Chama,
every country
Kenya
has Chama, Tontine, all of those names speak to the function that the multi-spend helps people accomplish. So that's one common thing which we see across the continent. And obviously based on activities of, if it's a community leader, the community space would be more useful because they get to consolidate all the information in there for their communities. Instead of Yankho constantly sharing the bid refill link or the bid seeker link for people to on-ramp, on-ramp and off-ramp, he can add those in the community space. And people can constantly find it pinned in the community. So space, very, very useful. But the very, very popular one, and it's because the technology is built to meet people where they are. So people find value in something that when Tandy or Yankho explain how that works, it's immediately understood because it's something that has been happening in communities for many years. Elderly people, young people, everyone understand how this works. And, it's an instant understanding and people can easily adopt it.
It's like a technological manifestation of something that already exists in the culture. So yeah, it's nice to see, Yankho. I saw your face kind of light up as you're saying, like, oh, this is the thing we're already doing, and it's always exciting for me to see people recount when they have that experience, because shout out to obviously our technical team at Fedi for bringing that to life in the way that they have. I think it really does resonate with people, which is super exciting. Let's get to a few community questions, if you don't mind, to our producer Mary here. Yeah. So how do most people use Bitcoin in Malawi? That's a great question. I'll add a little bit to that if that's okay. Is it more, do people think about it more in terms of spending, maybe more in terms of a savings mechanism, or both?
All right. It's a bit of a mixed thing. For most of us, we usually just view it as a tool, like DCA. So most of us are doing the DCA just as a savings. But with a lot of innovation that we have started building around it, people are actually seeing that it's a better payment option, that has to, the Lightning that is allowing people to transact instantly, and with some of the things that we've been building. So I think it's a bit of both, but I should say this is based on our communities, Bitcoin communities, but out there, for other people that are not within the Bitcoin ecosystem or communities, they're actually just trading, pretty much just, they're doing trading, and then, when they buying low, selling high, buying low, selling high kind of stuff. So that's how I can put it in that way, that for most of us who are Bitcoiners, it's a split where a lot of people are just doing DCA, just maybe holding it, and other people are looking at it as a tool for facilitating transactions. And for other people who are just curious because of the Forex issues here in Malawi, they are always looking for a way to spend it because they think it's an alternative because one of the biggest thing is, like you said, it's a landlocked country where a lot of things we're just importing. And, one of the most biggest industries, the automotive industry, where people are bringing in cars and stuff. And because right now, the waiting time for you to buy a car, for example, in China, to use the bank rate, so we call it, can range from anything from 3 months to a year just to get your car. It's not about the car moving from China to here, but for you to gather enough Forex just to get $1,000 to buy a car from China to here. So it can take you up to a year. So, the question that has always revolved around, when people spark Bitcoin conversations, is like, are we going to be able to import cars from China with Bitcoin? So a lot of them are using it, are viewing it as a tool, as an alternative tool to this Forex issue that we are currently facing. So people are looking for that kind of thing. So that's how I can answer that question.
I appreciate that detail. That really brings it to life for me. So that's a necessity in the country. People are looking for cars. Can I use this thing to help facilitate, get this thing that I need? I think that's actually speaks to the power of maybe the traction that Bitcoin really has started to get there. Very, very interesting, fascinating. Let's go to our second question here, if you don't mind, Mary. Shout out to Mary, as always, for crushing it as a producer. Curious about what Bitcoin tools exist in Malawi or are in the course of being built. So yeah, it's a great question to ask somebody who's working with the BitDev community, I'm sure.
All right. So yeah, the tools that are currently being built, we have Bitinsika. Shout out to the Bitcoin Woma team for building this, and shout out to Fedi for, I think it's under the mini apps as well, or in the process of being integrated in it. So so Bitinsika is basically Tando for Malawi. That's what I like to call it. It's Tando for Malawi. Yeah, so that's Bitinsika, and of course, there's also Ulendo that I'm building myself. It's a ride hairing and Airbnb booking style kind of app, and of course, it's like a super app as well. It's a Nostr super app. So you have like the feature, you have the rides and the stays and the bookings all in one app. And I think we did a test call with Modibe, so you can call people using your npub from around the world.
That was amazing. That was amazing, man.
It was no lagging, you know.
Yes. Call people using your npub.
Yeah.
Phone calls.
Yes.
A phone call. That was I was mind blown.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Let's go.
So
let's go.
That's what I've tried to bring together. Yeah. So I think one of the key things was to look around and say, hey, we don't have like our own Nostr client, you know, African native sort of like Nostr client. And especially looking around the, you know, the initial idea was looking around the tourism sector where, you know, a lot of people who are actually offering this, you know, tourism services, they're not actually getting what they supposed to get, you know. So this is like giving them direct access. So it's powered by Bitcoin Lightning, where everything else is paid in Lightning, and you know, you don't have to think about Facebook. I mean, so yeah, Facebook, you can use the feeds feature, and you don't even have to worry about WhatsApp calls because we've got you. So the call feature is there. So yeah, that's what we are actually building. This is one way of me building circular economies, because I'm also very interested in building circular economies. So if you have someone who is using this social app and, you know, it's private, you know, all they have to care about is their private and public key, and they can, you know, move it across all the different social platforms. And that's one way to get people interested in it, you know, some sort of people like the youth living in an urban setting. And then once they are there, they can explore the ecosystem and they will get to know what Bitcoin is. It's like, oh, okay, I can book a ride in this app, but I need to get my hands on Bitcoin. What is Bitcoin? And then that sparks the conversation that brings us, and someone who is just there sitting, you know, they feel locked out, they can actually accept Bitcoin. And then once they accept the Bitcoin, and then they can, you know, first stage they off ramp, and then they understand this piece of technology, and then they spark the curiosity. So this is a better way also to sort of like build this circular economies to bring people together in one kind of community through these kind of tools that we are building. So yeah, that's the whole idea.
Making phone calls with an npub. I'm sorry, my brain. You just destroyed my brain. Thank God this happened. Thank goodness this happened towards the end of the conversation. I'm blown away. Everything you just said, and also this idea of you building a super app that will probably, it'll be a mini app within another super app. So I think we're all in the process of becoming superheroes or super something. I don't know what's happening here, but you have blown my mind, Yankho. Absolutely, absolutely wild. For those who want to watch,
the app is building is quite amazing. And to his point, Bitinsika is built by, I think, Grant and the guys at Bitcoin Bomber.
Okay.
You know, we're seeing more of communities building their own tools instead of waiting for, you know, big guys to do that. And we're in the process of listing that mini app for on-ramping as well as off-ramping, just doing final tests. Once it's ready, it'll be available on the Fedi mini app catalog, and people can add it in their communities.
Amazing. Yeah, I feel like Nostr, people are really starting to wrap their head around the potential of Nostr, but I say potential because oftentimes when people think of Nostr, they think of a Twitter clone or an X clone, right? They, you know, Primal or Damus, the first thing they interacted with, but there's all of these other communication capabilities and other capabilities of things we can do across Nostr. And I think we're just starting to tap into that. And I see a lot more people really excited. When I spoke with Gloa from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, or was messaging with him, when he spoke about all of the things he's doing, of which there are just many, seemingly dozens of projects he's working on, it seemed that he was almost most excited about what he's doing with Bebop and Nostr. The Nostr Bitcoin mix really just seems to be this really special thing happening right now. I think especially in Africa, really, really exciting to see. So Yankho, very, very cool. Looking forward to testing that app out myself. Very, very exciting. If you want to listen back to this, if you want to have your mind blown again, please be aware that you could do that via our YouTube channel. So please feel free to scan that QR code. We will be posting this conversation there. So if you want to watch it on your television or your whatever different computer screen, you could do that. You could do so on YouTube. While you're there, if you wouldn't mind subscribing, we would greatly appreciate it. This has been super exciting, Yankho. Thank you for dealing with the technical difficulties you're dealing with. I've gotten personally so much from this conversation. It's been super exciting to hear everything that you're building from the community perspective and the technological perspective. Before we land the plane here, just wanted to know if you had any final thoughts or anything you'd like to share.
Well, I think I'm super excited to have been part of the call. And, I nearly missed it because I was traveling today, coming to Blantyre. And yeah, so, and with Tandy having difficulties, I wish was part of this because now, since I've given them the direction, and these guys are really doing an amazing job. And I think it's best run by the women, because the women of Satoshi, that makes sense. And these guys are really doing an amazing job, and they're really pushing to sort of like, work to bring Bitcoin adoption at its best. And I just want to give shout out to the Fedi team for actually doing this, and for whatever you're doing, and the technology that you're bringing to Africa. This is helping us a lot in ways that you might not have ever imagined when you came up with the Fedi app. And one of the things that I always say is to for people, especially here in Africa, to always use Bitcoin according to our local context. And this is actually what is actually helping us. And it is also helping us to build better tools, because we understand better the local context, how everything else goes. And with technology, with this technology, Bitcoin in the picture, then we can actually fuse it with whatever problem we are trying to solve, that is actually being big problems that we are facing in our local communities. So I think that's a very important thing that I wanted to add, that it's one thing because I've always had questions, like when I'd been at one of the ministries, we wanted to do a meetup there, and people were like, why would you want to go there? The policymakers and stuff. So I had difficult questions. People asked me difficult questions that I never thought about when we were just in our Bitcoin, ecosystems, because I think we are sometimes lenient with each other, asking each other some simple questions without even having the hard stuff and the hard realities. Okay. And these are the questions that will help us build better tools. And we should always be open to those kind of conversations to sort of like help us think deeply, just than the surface. Because when I was there, and even in one of the meetups we had in a very remote area, we are talking of an area where people don't even have feature phones. It's very hard to find one with a feature phone. So those are the actual realities that we have, for example, here in Malawi. So people, the leader of that client asked me a question. Okay, so you're coming with this Bitcoin education, we understand everything else, but how does that resonate with us? Yes, you're talking about, being censorship resistant and all this kind of thing. But how does that relate to our own local context? We don't even know about oppression. All we know is just we wake up in the morning, we go to the farm, and then, we do our farming business, we come back, and, the days goes on like that. How does Bitcoin help us in any way, shape, or form? So you try to bring them to speeds to understand, the forex issue and how our money is losing value, but they still don't think that's a thing. They still think, okay, this is just a way of life. I mean, we've been living with that over and over. So how is Bitcoin special? And that was asked by the local leader of that clan, and it was also asked by someone who was working in the ministry. And it was something that had to make me think deep and sort of like think of a way to sort of like, okay, there is a context of Bitcoin that works in other parts of the world, but there is also a certain context of Bitcoin that we have to think through along those lines according to our own local context. And that's what really matters the most, especially when we are building tools to sort of like help people to solve the actual problems that people are facing in that kind of context. So yeah, I think that's one of the things that I wanted to highlight the most. So yeah.
Amazing stuff. Is Matsepane available in Malawi? I don't know if that's one of the countries they, yeah.
Yes, Matsepane, and actually that was a conversation because when we had someone say, there's no internet here, like barely internet here. So I was like, oh, no worries, there's Matsepane. But then there was like, okay, so you have Matsepane, right? But where do we get the Bitcoins? Where do we get the Bitcoins in the first place? And then once we get in our phones, then at the end of the day, we go to a shop at the trading center where they still don't accept Bitcoin, and we have to, so it's something that, because we're trying to build circular economies, and this is where we had to start, because one of the key things is not only the tools, but of course, issues of liquidity that we are facing here in Malawi. Where do we get the Bitcoins, and how do we get it to flow around apart from just receiving grants for these kind of they are building circular economies? But that's still something that we need to work around, think about, liquidity and all these kind of things that we have to bring into the picture. And that involves, it's a multifaceted kind of problem where we have to work with maybe at some point with the policymakers, working with the local leaders, working with the devs. And that's why I always feel like we are all one in part of the same thing, that we need to sit down and think about solutions we can think through when you talk about Bitcoin in our context. So yeah.
Amazing. Appreciate that, Yankho. Very, very nice. Modibe, some final thoughts?
Yes, Yankho, thank you so much for that contact. It's very important for, now and then to get the raw feedback and what people are actually saying on the ground. We are fortunate at Fedi to work alongside community leaders across the continent. So most of the things that he's speaking of, we are very aware, and where possible, we try get involved and help with putting up things in place. For example, earning is something that's very, very critical. Unless people have a way of earning Bitcoin, you can't really expect them to go buy Bitcoin and save it. But if people start buying internet with Bitcoin, they need to first buy Bitcoin, and while they're keeping it there, they might see how it works in terms of preserving value, and then from there, it's instant education on the spot. So the approach has to be totally different to how we were used to doing things. It has to be bottom up. But while we need to do that, we can still provide support and a couple of tools and resources here and there to ensure that communities level themselves up using this freedom tag. So I love the way you framed it, and I think the good thing with Malawi and many of the communities is we're seeing community leaders building tools and solutions for their own communities, which is what we appreciate the most. So people with context of the community that they exist in, challenges that they're facing, build tools for their own communities, and then take them to the world. Some can be replicable in other markets, some cannot. But when a tool is built bottom up, it's very rare that it will fail compared to if we come up with a tool and just plant it in the community. So that has been the key learning, and I wanted to share that as my closing remarks. To say context is very important when it comes to working with communities, and how we ensure that like the circular economy and all the other moving parts and pieces, always have to go back to people that it's trying to serve. And Yankho made very important points, which I feel everyone should take note of.
Remarkably important points. Agreed, 100%, Modibe. Yankho, this has been incredibly enlightening. Thandi, we deeply missed you not being here. It's very, very much a shame. I was looking forward to having you on and speaking with you as well. But Yankho, you've given us amazing information about the context in Malawi and what's happening there. Super, super exciting. Super excited that many Bitcoiners will be able to see it with their own two eyes come December of this year at the Africa Bitcoin Conference. I'm planning to be there, so I'm looking forward to meeting you in person there. And this was deeply enlightening. Thank you for also making every effort to make sure that whether it's power issues or internet issues, you hung with us here and we made this happen. So this has been a tremendous honor. Continue to do the amazing work that you're doing. And to everybody who tuned in today, we hope you got as much from this as we did. And we'll be back next week with a guest from Bitcoin Bharat from India, as well as our community master, Dea Reskita from Indonesia, and maybe our India night here at Fedi. So we'll be moving over to Southeast Asia for the next conversation. But for this one, we're signing off. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you again, Modibe, Yankho. This has been a pleasure. We'll talk soon, everybody. Take it easy.